Welcome to the World Wire Update UT. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon for more updates and thrilling short scenes. In a moment that captured the nation's attention, the United States Supreme Court, by the slimmest of margins, a 5-4 vote, issued an emergency order with far-reaching consequences. The decision came late at night, underscoring the urgency and gravity of the matter at hand. The court temporarily reinstated a federal law that bars individuals under domestic violence restraining orders from possessing firearms. This law, designed to protect victims and prevent further harm, had been struck down by a lower court, raising immediate concerns among advocates and law enforcement officials. While this emergency order does not settle the broader constitutional question, it effectively pauses the lower court's ruling, maintaining the legal status quo for the time being. The justice's intervention means that, at least for now, the protections offered by the federal law remain in place, providing a sense of relief to those who feared a sudden change in policy. For law enforcement agencies and advocates for domestic violence survivors, this move is critical. It keeps a vital tool in their hands, allowing them to prevent individuals deemed dangerous in domestic violence cases from accessing guns, potentially saving lives and averting tragedies. The narrow split decision also highlights the deep ideological divisions within the Supreme Court, especially when it comes to interpreting the Second Amendment and the scope of gun control in America. Each justice's vote reflects a broader national debate that has only intensified in recent years. This emergency order is more than just a procedural pause, it signals the beginning of a high-stakes legal battle. The outcome could have profound implications, not only for gun rights and public safety, but also for how courts balance individual freedoms with the collective need to protect vulnerable members of society. The Supreme Court's intervention has reignited an urgent national conversation, forcing Americans to confront the difficult question of how to balance constitutional liberties with the imperative to shield those at risk of violence. The debate is passionate, with voices on both sides demanding to be heard. As the legal process unfolds, the stage is set for a major showdown, one that could ultimately reshape the landscape of American gun law and redefine the boundaries between personal rights and public safety for generations to come. At the center of this legal storm is a federal law that has sparked heated debate across the nation, drawing attention from lawmakers, advocacy groups, and ordinary citizens alike. This law makes it a federal crime for anyone under a domestic violence restraining order to possess firearms, even if they have not been convicted of a crime. The intent is to prevent potential violence before it happens, by removing access to deadly weapons from those deemed a risk to their partners or families. Enacted in the 1990s, this legislation was a direct response to alarming statistics showing that domestic abusers with access to guns are significantly more likely to commit homicide. Lawmakers hope to curb the tragic pattern of domestic disputes turning deadly and to offer greater protection to vulnerable individuals. Supporters of the law argue that it is a crucial, life-saving measure, one that gives survivors a fighting chance and helps prevent senseless tragedies. They point to countless stories of lives saved when firearms were removed from dangerous situations. On the other hand, critics claim the law goes too far, infringing on the Second Amendment rights of individuals who have not been criminally convicted. They argue that a civil restraining order, which can be issued without a full trial, should not be enough to strip someone of their constitutional rights. The central challenge before the courts is this: can the government disarm someone based solely on a civil restraining order, or must it wait until a criminal act has occurred? This question strikes at the heart of how we balance individual rights with collective safety. This case forces judges to weigh the urgent need for public safety against the fundamental right to bear arms, a right deeply rooted in American history and fiercely defended by many. The outcome will have sweeping consequences for domestic violence victims, potentially shaping the resources and protections available to them for years to come. And beyond that, it will set a precedent for the future of gun regulation in America, influencing how the law interprets the balance between safety and constitutional rights. The Supreme Court's 2022 Bruen decision changed everything, requiring gun laws to align with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. Courts now must find a historical analog from the 18th or 19th centuries to uphold modern gun laws. The Eighth Circuit, applying this test, struck down the federal law on domestic violence restraining orders, finding no historical precedent for such restrictions. This history and tradition approach has thrown gun safety laws into chaos, with judges struggling to match modern problems to centuries-old norms. The Bruen effect is clear long-standing regulations are suddenly vulnerable, and the legal landscape is in turmoil. The Supreme Court must now decide if modern threats can be addressed without a direct historical twin. The Justice Department responded urgently, warning the Supreme Court that letting the Eighth Circuit's decision stand would endanger countless domestic violence victims. The DOJ argued the law is a proven, essential safeguard, especially during the dangerous period after a restraining order is issued. They highlighted the risk of legal chaos. Conflicting court rulings would leave law enforcement and courts unsure how to act. The administration stressed that the stakes are immediate and real, lives are on the line. Without Supreme Court intervention, thousands deemed dangerous could regain access to firearms. The DOJ's message: this isn't just legal theory, but a matter of urgent public safety. The Supreme Court's emergency order was a direct response to these warnings. The 5-4 Supreme Court vote exposed deep and persistent ideological rifts over the Second Amendment. The dissenters, including Justice Thomas, strongly argued that the Constitution doesn't allow disarmament based on civil restraining orders without clear historical precedent. The majority signaled openness to a more flexible approach, suggesting that historical principles, not just exact analogs, could justify modern regulations. The core debate remains: does the Bruen test require a direct historical match, or can courts reason by analogy to address today's threats and challenges? The outcome will ultimately hinge on which vision of the Second Amendment prevails in this landmark case. At the center of this landmark legal battle is Zackey Rahimi, a Texas resident whose story has become a focal point in the national debate over gun rights and public safety. Rahimi was placed under a domestic violence restraining order after allegedly assaulting his ex-girlfriend, a move intended to protect her and others from potential harm. The restraining order specifically prohibited him from possessing firearms, a common legal safeguard in such cases. Despite the court's order, Rahimi did not surrender his guns. Instead, he continued to keep firearms in his possession, and was later implicated in a series of violent incidents, including multiple shootings that drew the attention of law enforcement and the public alike. These events raised serious concerns about the effectiveness of restraining orders and the risks posed when they are ignored. When police searched Rahimi's home, they discovered several firearms, leading to his arrest and federal indictment for violating the law that bars people under domestic violence restraining orders from having guns. This law, now at the center of a constitutional showdown, was designed to prevent tragedies before they happen. Rahimi's initial attempts to challenge the charges in court were unsuccessful. However, after the Supreme Court's Bruen decision, which changed the legal landscape for gun regulations, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed its stance, declaring the law unconstitutional and setting the stage for a major legal confrontation. With Rahimi's case and a similar ruling from the Eighth Circuit, the issue quickly escalated, compelling the Supreme Court to step in and resolve the conflict between lower courts. For those who support the law, Rahimi's actions are a stark reminder of why such protections are necessary to keep communities safe. On the other hand, opponents argue that the case is not about one man's behavior, but about the fundamental constitutional rights of all Americans, and whether the government can restrict those rights based on civil orders. The case has become a flashpoint, symbolizing the ongoing struggle between ensuring public safety and upholding constitutional principles. It has sparked passionate debate across the country, with advocates on both sides watching closely. Whatever the Supreme Court decides, the outcome will set a powerful precedent, shaping the future of gun laws and civil liberties far beyond Zackey Rahimi himself. The Supreme Court's emergency order is just the beginning. The justices must now decide whether to fully review the case. With lower courts divided and national stakes high, a definitive ruling is likely on the horizon. The outcome could invalidate not just this law, but other restrictions on at-risk individuals, or it could affirm a more flexible approach to gun regulation. The Rahimi case is the Supreme Court's chance to clarify how history shapes modern gun laws. The decision will define the Second Amendment's reach for years to come. As the nation waits, the court's split reflects a country deeply divided over guns and safety. the implications will echo far beyond the courtroom, shaping American life and law.